Hello everyone and welcome to Oklahoma. We are here in the OESD studio and we are doing kind of a special event of sorts today. And so if you're joining us, you are joining us today for Stabilizer Q&A. My name is Jordan and of course I'm joined with Karie.
Hello.
And we're going to go through questions that you, our viewers, have asked about Stabilizer.
Yeah, normally we get to decide what we're teaching and this time you guys get to decide.
And I want to say thank you in advance for all the questions you submitted.
We got a lot of them.
It was more than expected. We read through all of them, I promise, and had a really hard time choosing. And so what we tried to do was go through all the questions and kind of group them into themes based on things that we saw coming up a lot.
Yes.
To make this content as useful for everyone. And really, especially focusing in on some of our newer embroiderers who have some questions about maybe the basics or where to get started. You know, the world of Stabilizer can get a little confusing and overwhelming for sure.
That is for sure.
And I think our goal by the end of this is to bring some clarity to or maybe even transparency into Stabilizer. So we're going to have a ton of fun with that.
And this video will be up really for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
So you don't worry about taking notes your first round. You can watch it again and again.
Fast forward.
So just sit, absorb, enjoy, and then
fun.
you can
Get a cup of
go
coffee,
back and rewatch.
Yeah.
So what happens if we did not choose their question?
Oh, that's a good question. So you did not win the Stabilizer question game, but we do, in all seriousness, actually have a couple great resources for you. So first and foremost, if you're not already a member of the Perfect Stitch, we really encourage you to join the Perfect Stitch.
That's our Facebook group.
That's exactly right. So Perfect Stitch by OESD on Facebook. Join, answer the questions, please. We just want to make sure you're a real human being and not a bot trying to sell us things and or steal our identity. And once you join in there, we will welcome you with open arms. Our education team's in there, a lot of our retailers, our tons of talented customers.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the great thing. We need an answer at 11 o'clock at night because I'm tucked into bed, but there is someone in the world that wants to answer that question.
Yeah, sorry, I just had a thought because I think we don't talk about this enough. In the Facebook group, there's actually a search option.
No way.
There is. There's a little search bar. It's not the the Facebook search, but there's a group search, and you can search for your question, like tiling scene
Pretty
or
slick.
freestanding lace, because probably a couple of people have asked the same question already.
Good thought.
You can ask it again, but there's a lot of answers and resources already there if you need something you want to look it up instead of waiting for an answer.
I've got another great resource for you. If you have a local OESD retailer, I encourage you to talk to them. They'll have a Stabilizer expert on that staff as well, who can help guide you into answering your questions, and they're just a great fun place to hang out too.
Also a great place to have your machine troubleshooting questions answered. We had a bunch of questions that were a little more machine specific. Obviously we're here kind of to talk about embroidery and Stabilizer and more of a general overview. So if you have machine specific questions or hoop specific questions, we saw those and they're very valid, but you're going to want to talk to your local retailer or whoever you bought your machine from.
Yeah. All right. So without further ado, let's jump into this.
All right.
So let's talk kind of a little bit about OESD and Stabilizer. So we've been doing this for, I think this is our 36th year now of making embroidery supplies and Stabilizer and designs. So most of our Stabilizers, we actually cut and package in-house. So throughout the world, there's a variety of mills that kind of specialize in each type of Stabilizer. And so our buying team works with those mills, kind of identifies the right blend that we want,
The best.
ships them in really big, giant rolls on pallets to us. And then we take those rolls and we trim them down to the sizes we need, package them beautifully all here in Oklahoma City, and then ship them to you. So again, thanks as always. Purchasing OESD products supports us and our small business and our team, and we just can't thank you enough for that. Of course, we have developed our Stabilizers over the years because we want to solve embroidery problems.
Yeah.
It's not just because we want to add a new Stabilizer into the mix of things to confuse people.
In fact, we do not want to do that.
We actually work really hard to keep the line concise, as crazy as that sounds. Really for us, we're trying to do a thing like embroider on a shoe, and there's no possible way to do it, and so we just have to come up with a product to do it.
Solving.
Yeah. And as always, we've got a great support team. So whether you're in the Perfect Stitch, you're talking to one of our retailers, or emailing us at support@OESD, we are here to help you. Let's dive in.
All right.
So Geraldine from Arizona asks, where do I start?
That's a very good question. And I think I know there was a lot of these questions. It's just, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. So what do I do?
Don't worry, we all felt that way.
Absolutely, and sometimes I still feel that way. So let's start with the basics. The basics are, of course, what is stabilizer and why do you need it? So stabilizer is the foundation of embroidery. So you almost always need stabilizer in your hoop when you're embroidering. So stabilizer serves two purposes. This is the best way that I can think of to talk about it. The first thing it's going to do is keep your project stable while you're embroidering. So in your hoop, because when that hoop is moving around, the needle's going up and down, you need your project to stay where you put it. So you need to have stabilizer behind that project in some way, shape, or form. The second purpose of stabilizer is to keep your embroidery looking good after you're done embroidering. So once it's out of the hoop and you've removed excess stabilizer and you're wearing and it's out in your life, you want that embroidery to maintain the beautiful look it had when it was first completed.
That's a good point.
So two questions you have to ask.
I know we often think about stabilizer kind of the first point, right? Shifting, puckering while embroidering, but you're right, the after the fact is probably almost kind of the forgotten part of why we need stabilizers. So,
yeah, I think, and we're going to go into how you choose stabilizer in just a second, but if you remember that you're trying to solve both of those problems, it's a good place to start, because it's not that hard. It's just you have to kind of ask yourself a certain number of questions, which we've outlined in a little bit. Yeah. But if you were starting, as many of you are, from scratch,
total scratch,
what would you do?
Paper towels, coffee filters, no? Okay, so it's a great question though, and a lot of you have it is like, I need a basic assortment of stabilizers. Yep. What do I buy, right? We see it at events all the time. We're out and someone's got like this armful of stabilizer. There's like, which of these do I need? You know, and there's kind of the...
The answer kind of is all of them.
Yeah, but that was always a challenge because that's a lot of money to spend to kind of build that library. It's like buying every color of Isacord, right? You don't just do that overnight. So we got to work on how do we make this a little bit simpler. And so we built this thing. So here, I'll just do this because this is kind of fun. Set that down. No, it's okay. Hey, I want to show everything too. So anyway, this beautiful box, which it's really pretty here. I'm going to put that right there. Look at that.
There it is.
Thank you, Riley. Great job on the camera today. So this is the complete stabilizer assortment of project rolls.
Yes. And what does that mean?
It's a good question. So project rolls are 12-inch wide cuts of stabilizer and a little bit smaller yardages. So think of it kind of like a sampler pack. You get a little bit of everything.
It's like when you go to the restaurant and you get the appetizer platter with all the different ones.
This is the buffet of stabilizer, okay? So let's just go through this real quick. I'm going to open all these up so you can kind of see what we get here. So we've got Fusion Fleece, Ultra Clean and Tear, Tearaway, Aqua Mesh, Washaway.
We're going to talk about these
fusible woven
in a little
cutaway,
bit so you know what this all means.
Fusible woven cutaway in black, gentle touch backing.
Yep, going to talk about that.
Badge Master.
Going to talk about that.
We've got Polymesh and its cousin, Fusible Polymesh.
Two of my all-time favorites.
We've got Stable Stick Tearaway.
Yep.
Medium weight Tearaway.
Holy cow, we're running out of room.
Fuse and Seal. Come on, this is fun. Aqua Mesh Plus. Ultra Clean and Tear Plus.
This is like a clown car.
This is great. Stable Stick. That's why I wanted to open this box, because you're like, there can't be that much inside that thing. And Applique Fuse and Fix and template sheets.
And we're going to touch on 97% of that in this class today.
Whew, that's going to be great. And we're going to do it pretty quickly.
Yes.
So this is an amazing item. It's available on our website, or you can order it from your local retailer. And it's a great assortment. We always give you a really nice discount on this too. So that way you can kind of build your library, get started, and also have some great savings. So that will be, again, that's on our website. It's you can search for the complete project roll collection or assortment, and I believe we'll link it on this video as well in the description. So if you're watching this with us on YouTube later and you're like, where's that thing? You don't have to find it. So all right.
And this is definitely a little bit different of a class than normal. While we're not teaching a technique, we are going to talk specifically about a bunch of stabilizers. You know, I always say to people, you don't have to buy them all. It really helps. This is a great way to do it because you're buying smaller quantities so you can see what you use instead of investing in big rolls. So again, we're not going to, try and shove this down your throat, but it's a good way to kind of start out and see what you might like.
So I now have this giant assortment of stabilizers, and Lucy and all of Lucy's friends wrote in with this question.
Big question.
Is there a stabilizer reference sheet, right?
And it made me realize we need to make this a little bit easier to find.
Yeah, because there is one.
Yeah, it's very nice.
So this is the sheet. And for a lot of people, they're always like, okay, there is like a perfect recipe for stabilizer. This plus this plus this equals perfection. And the reality with choosing a stabilizer for a project is it's more like a set of guidelines than rules. And so that's what this reference guide does for you. Across the, I'm trying to remember, again, across the top, it's all the different types of stabilizer, and across the side is a bunch of different materials or projects that you might be embroidering on. And the way it works is it's kind of like a grid. You go here, you meet in the middle, those are your options. And so you'll see often for many different types of fabric, there's different options of stabilizer that can work. And so then that's where we have like a full circle, kind of a half moon circle, and a not filled in circle with a little guide that kind of walks you through each application.
There's the feather and the weight, and it's all very clear.
So we're going to give you access to this now, totally free. Go ahead, you can take your phone out, take a picture of your screen, or if you search stabilizer reference guide on our website, it'll redirect you to that
and we'll
link
link
as
it
well.
in this video also. But this is a great resource. You can print it out. It's a PDF, so it's print ready.
Nice.
And that will be a great starting point. And of course, it's not ever this is the only thing you can do, but it's a great place to start.
Yeah, it is. It's totally free. We want everyone to have it. But there also are a couple other places where you can get resources. So the back of your labels. So those labels that we wrap on your stabilizer, on the back of it, because we had some empty space, we printed all the instructions for that stabilizer. And so that way you can read about it, understand if there's any rules around heat or washing or anything you need to know.
This is a great example, and also references a question we got a lot about shrinking of stabilizer.
Ooh, good question.
None of our product shrinks. However, if you don't read the instructions, so for example, fusible polymesh. Polymesh is actually not made of polyester.
Correct.
It's made of nylon. And if
Which we learned from Kimberly is a polymide. Polymide, which is where polymesh comes from.
Yes.
So,
but it's not polyester.
The chemists at OESD, I guess.
Yeah, it was before our time. So made of nylon, and if you put high heat on nylon, it melts, right? So polymesh, if you put a screaming hot iron on it for fusing or for just pressing, it can shrink a little bit. But it can melt a little bit, which looks like shrinking.
Yes.
So
melting, shrinkage, very similar, but
if you read the instructions, and you can see we've highlighted it here, it actually says use a medium iron.
So why this matters, right? Occasionally, if you've talked to a friend that's been doing this for a while, they've told you that you need to take your polymesh off the roll and put it in your dryer, and you don't.
Pre-shrink.
Yes, but you can't pre-shrink. All you, in theory, could do is pre-melt, and that's not super useful. So that's where the instructions come in a lot. And if you just read those instructions, they're going to tell you, for example, when you're doing patches, right? When you want to stick those onto things from time to time, you would use a product called Fuse and Seal, which I think we'll get to in a little bit later. And it's very specific ironing instructions because we're trying to activate an adhesive, and it takes just the right amount of time of temperature and love for that to then permanently adhere. So instructions are great on the back of the labels. And if you have questions, we're always here to kind of get into those more advanced things. It's kind of our favorite thing to do. So.
All right, so what happens if you don't have stabilizer, you don't have enough stabilizer? Right, this is the thing I think that we all do. So we get our embroidery machines and we are pumped about it first time, right? And you take it home and you open the box and then you say, now what? And if you...
I was wondering what you were going to say there.
Well, that's how you would feel. You would stand there and you'd say, now what? If you we're not lucky enough to get a bunch of stabilizer with your machine. You might say, okay, I'm going to go get a towel from the closet. This is
like literally my first story.
Go to the linen closet and get a tea towel or a towel.
Kitchen rag.
And you stick it in the hoop without anything on there, and you try to embroider, and you say to yourself, well, that looks terrible, right? Because you don't know any better yet, and that we are all there together. But so if you did that, you may have had something that looks like this slide on the screen.
I'm just going to jump in. The funny thing is actually in support, we get a lot of email tickets from someone where they've had issues like this, where the alignments looks like it's off. And they'll say, we get an email and it's like, hey, there's a problem with the digitizing on this design. It doesn't measure up. And the reality is like 99.999% of the time, the issue is actually just that either it wasn't hooped tight enough, and we'll talk hooping and some of that, or there wasn't enough stabilizer, and so the design just pulled the fabric in a little bit as it kept stitching, and it causes these alignment issues.
Yeah. If you think about this, think about putting stitches on a piece of fabric, right? The more stitches you put in one place, the fabric itself kind of draws in if you don't have support there. So the center of this flower, for example, kind of pulled the fabric in, and then the last step is that outline, right? The outline is actually where it's supposed to be, but the inside is no longer where it was supposed to be because it has drawn in. So, you know, it's not an alignment issue, it's not, sometimes it's an alignment issue, but in most cases it is not. If it's our design, we can pretty much guarantee it's not.
Sometimes it's we were, you know, reaching for the coffee or
bump the
beverage and hit the embroidery arm, but most of the time, this is a stabilizer thing, and that's why stabilizer is so critical. So that's really our goal today as we kind of work through this is how you choose what stabilizer and how you choose enough of it or not too much of it.
Right. And which reminds me, we had a question, I couldn't put them all in, but they're all in my head. Someone asked if you can over-stabilize. And I'm gonna say mostly no.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right? You can under-stabilize for sure, but if you're in doubt, over-stabilize. There are very few cases where it's going to, I mean, don't put 10 layers of something. That might cause some issues. But if you're unsure, add another layer and you'll probably be in better shape. So So how do we choose what stabilizer to use?
We become stabilizer detectives.
Yes. So this is kind of like a choose your own adventure book.
I loved those.
Right? They should, I don't know, do they still do those? You have kids.
I don't know that they have those.
You should get those.
Right? Exactly.
You'd like them. Okay, so you're going to ask yourself a bunch of questions.
Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1. What the heck are you embroidering on? Right? There's a big difference between, for example, a denim jacket and a bridal veil or a piece of organza, right? You put stitches on either of those things, they're going to behave very differently. So the first thing you're asking yourself is, what am I embroidering on?
Good.
Number 2.
This is
favorite slide.
You can't take this. This is my favorite slide.
See, we don't normally teach this together, so we're going to compete over slides.
Good. Okay, so this is the math problem of the day, and I promise we'll make it brief.
Why there's no magic chart.
Yes, so we get asked all the time, hey, I have a design, it's 20,000 stitches, how much stabilizer and what stabilizer do I use? And the answer to that is I can't tell you with just that information.
Correct.
And here's the reason for it. On screen, we have 2 different designs. One is a 4-inch by roughly 4-inch rose. That's a Jackie Robinson rose. Beautiful. And then on the other side, we have a Shannon Roberts design that's 8 by 8 inches.
Right, so double the size almost.
Quadruple. See, this is why it's my favorite.
See, we're on the map.
Because the rose would fit 4 times into the Spring is in the Air design from Shannon Roberts.
Okay, I got you.
So Shannon Roberts' design is 4 times less dense, or Jackie Robinson's design, this floral, is 4 times denser.
But they have
Same
a
number of
similar
stitches, basically.
Exactly, right.
So that's why the stitch to stabilizer equation never works. And so this is really where that detective stuff comes in, right? Looking at the designs, you can see that Jackie Robinson's, to have kind of the depth and dimension of those floral, of that rose, requires more stitches. And it requires us to layer stitches at different angles to create depth. And because of that, it's more opportunity for that design to pull. So we need to stabilize heavier.
It's bringing the fabric in.
Exactly.
If it's not stabilized.
And it makes sense if you think about making a stitch, right? A stitch is essentially a little knot, and it's just pulling together. And so if you do that 30,000 times, you've tied a couple knots. Okay.
And Shannon Roberts is a chalkboard artist, and our team does an amazing job of kind of replicating that sketchy look. So that's going to be a lot airier, which means you need less stabilizer to support it.
Good.
All right, number 3. How will the project be embroidered? Will you be...
Hand. No, I'm just kidding.
It's a 4-letter word. Will you be hooping the item? Will you be floating the item? And if you don't know what I mean by that, that's all right.
We'll talk about that soon.
But that's your third question, is how are you actually achieving your embroidery?
Cool. And then, what's the finished result going to be?
Right.
Can you see the back of the embroidery, or will it shadow or show through whatever you embroider as well?
Is your embroidery going on a quilt block that, like on the right here, gets put into a quilt so you'll never see the back? Or like our image on the left, is it going to be a handkerchief that you're gifting where you wouldn't want stabilizer on it at all, which is a whole other, and we'll talk about that too.
Cool.
So you've asked yourself those questions.
Good job.
Now you're going to ask yourself, does my fabric stretch?
Okay.
You don't even really have to ask yourself. Take your fabric and see if it stretches, right? This is your fabric stretches.
Stretches.
So
Thank God, by the way.
that's true. What do people do before stretchy fabric? Ate less pie.
That's it. It was just
all about the pie.
It was a lack of
Always
pie
about the
prior to stretch. Okay.
If your fabric stretches,
Yep.
you must. There's not a lot of times that I say must, but I think that most embroiderers will agree with me. If your fabric stretches, you must use a cutaway.
Makes sense.
The reason for that is, again, you're not only supporting it while it's in the hoop, you're supporting it when it's out of the hoop. So imagine a t-shirt. We've all done this, where we put a t-shirt on,
Yep.
and that seam, we've all put t-shirts on.
All right, I have a story. We had an ugly sweater contest here at OESD years ago. And so I got the bright idea to embroider around the neck of the sweater. And
I
then
think we saw that sweater on a video once long ago.
I barely could get that thing over my big dome because I
wouldn't
forgot
stretch.
about stretching.
Right. My story was, if you put a t-shirt on and the hem pops, we've all had that thing where you're putting a shirt on and the seam, you can hear that seam
Yeah,
pop.
that sounds nice.
That's because it's not supported, right? So if you have embroidery and you embroider on anything that stretches, once you take it out of the hoop and you trim your stabilizer, or tear your stabilizer away if you didn't use a cutaway, when you wash or wear or stretch that item, the stabilizer, the embroidery itself is going to distort. So if it's stretchy, cutaway. We have versions of cutaway you can use, but that's kind of a good fork in the road, right?
Cool.
If it doesn't stretch, you're pretty good with a tearaway. So for example, we have a bath towel. Bath towels are really not stretchy. They're soft, but they're not stretchy.
Fluffy.
And a canvas bag,
Yep, that's good.
right? Not going to stretch.
Cool.
Home decor, a lot of our in the hoop projects you'll see, because you don't want stabilizer
In the
after
seams, yeah.
in the complete project.
You want to tear it away.
And
Lace.
one more question, I guess. What if you want no stabilizer whatsoever left behind? Kind of like that handkerchief example,
Washaway.
or freestanding lace.
Because we want to be able to wash it away.
Right. And a washaway is essentially a starch-based stabilizer.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
We're going to talk about it a little bit further, but it's great for freestanding lace and for really delicate fabrics, organza, that kind of thing.
Cool.
So, speaking of,
When to use Washaway.
when to use washaway.
We just kind of said this.
Yeah, we did.
Look at us.
Washaway stabilizers must be used when you want
It all gone.
it all gone.
Yes.
All right, so a note on choosing stabilizer weight.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Okay. So we talked about this a little bit when we got into the Jackie Robinson, Shannon Roberts scenario. But essentially, the denser the design is going to be, the heavier the weight of stabilizer. And stabilizers are traditionally weighed in ounces, but that's a lot of numbers and math. And to make it easy for all of us, we kind of went into a lightweight, medium weight, heavyweight kind of like world to make that a bit simpler. In addition, there's nothing wrong with doubling up, tripling up, or combining different recipes to get where you need to. For example, in tiling scenes, we'll often recommend 2 layers of heavyweight tearaway. But then there's some times when we have some tiling scenes that aren't as dense, and we don't want you to have to pull as much stabilizer out of the seam allowance. So then in those cases, we might say 2 layers of, for example, ultra clean and tear, or 1 layer of heavyweight, 1 layer of ultra clean and tear.
Yeah.
One of my favorite examples is when you're logoing shirts. So I think a lot of people have had someone in their life ask them to put a logo on a shirt.
Yeah.
And it depends on the logo, right? Not all logos are created equal. Some of them are really easy to embroider, and some of them are a pain. And so when you're logoing, often you might want to use like a heavyweight cutaway, but you don't want that heavyweight cutaway up against the skin. Right. So we would do something like where we'd take a layer of heavyweight cutaway, put it right up against the back of the shirt, then a layer of polymesh over it, because that's softer and it's going to kind of protect the skin, where polymesh on its own might not work.
Right.
And then we can get gentle touch, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yes.
So in other words, don't feel like you only use 1 layer, and so 1 layer of heavyweight is, if medium weight's not heavy enough, go right to 1 layer of heavyweight. Sometimes you'll have better results testing with 2 layers of medium weight versus 1 of heavy, so on and so forth.
And that's a very good word you just said, testing.
Yeah.
Because I think something we forget to do, and I think is really critical, is test your design.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a hurry. I don't have time to sew that thing out twice.
Yeah, I know, but
guess what happens when you don't test?
would you rather ruin
Sew
your
it out
thing?
twice, exactly.
I'm a big fan of going to Goodwill or a consignment shop or thrift store and buying something in a similar fabric, like a denim jacket
Smart.
or a t-shirt, and trying it with different stabilizers, because that's the way you're going to learn what gives you the best result.
It's kind of fun too.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we sort our stabilizer, again, trying to make it easy for you, into categories.
Yes.
So we have red for Cutaway,
Yep.
purple for Tearaway, blue for Washaway, and yellow for specialty or everything else.
Nice. All right. So let's talk Cutaway.
Let's do it.
Okay. So there's a variety of options in Cutaway stabilizers. For example, heavyweight, medium weight, heavyweight in black, and stable stick.
Cutaway.
Cutaway.
To specify, we
There's-
have 2 stable sticks.
That's
We'll talk
true.
about that in a bit, but there is and stable stick is a sticky stabilizer, so we'll
It's
talk about that.
Great stuff.
It is great stuff.
Okay.
So
Carrying on.
how do you remove Cutaway?
Cutaway.
You do.
Yes. You've got a sample for us, I think.
do. So I embroidered this fabulous neon rainbow.
Yeah, he's pretty snazzy. Look, he's like happy.
No, I just love it because it looks like it's glowing.
Yeah.
So I actually would have typically used a black stabilizer on this. We have a black Cutaway, but I wanted you guys to be able to see
On camera.
what it looks like.
Yep.
So this is one of my favorite examples, because you might be tempted to kind of cut all of this stuff in here away, and you really don't need to. You want to cut about 1/4 of an inch around the outside, but especially if your item is stretchy, which this is cotton, so it's not. If you cut the stabilizer out from in here, imagine this stretching, and the 2 ends of the rainbow are now distorted, right? Because you don't have anything to keep that stable. So think about it as cutting away kind of that outside, but don't worry about this stuff in here.
Good.
So very important note. And don't be very careful when you're cutting it away so you don't cut your fabric.
Cool,
Because
of
we've
course.
all done that.
Yeah.
Tearaway.
On to Tearaway. So Tearaway stabilizer is named because of how we remove it. We tear it away. And same thing, we've got a variety in here. So we've got heavyweights, we've got medium weight, we have lightweight, we have medium weight in black, we have ultra clean and tear. There are so many different Tearaways because this is probably one of the most popular categories of stabilizer that exists. And our goal is to always have something that kind of works for every different scenario.
Yep.
So of course, Tearaway gets its name, like we said, because you just tear it away. And resist the urge to take all your layers and tear it once. I know that sometimes the efficiency seems to be so great, but I can tell you from experience, you will tear your stitches out.
Yeah.
So
or
kind
pull
of
them to the back of your fabric or distort things. So just be
all good.
gentle.
Yeah. Of course, you know, Kelly does a great example in this photo of showing kind of use your finger to support the stitches, kind of hold them in place while you tear around it.
Yep.
And then for those of you that are, let's say, I don't want to say nitpicky, but it's kind of picking out the insides or a little OCD on it, you are welcome to kind of pick at all those insides of your letters and things. Otherwise, depending on the stabilizer, some of them will actually break down on
Yep.
their own.
And we're going to touch on that in just a little bit.
Okay, so Washaway stabilizer. This is the Aqua Mesh Plus, Badge Master, and Washaway tape.
Yep.
Right.
I threw the tape in there just because I feel like it's
Yeah.
kind of one of those things we don't talk about enough. Basically, if you need to patch a hole or need to stick something that's going to be inside of a project, it's a great resource.
Good. Cool.
So removing Washaway.
You can do this.
We
one.
get this question all the time. My son, who's a plumber, says that I can't wash this down the pipes, or I have a septic system, or whatever it is. I do not want you to do anything you're not comfortable with. However, Washaway is removed by rinsing it in warm running water. The hotter the water, the faster the starch dissolves.
But it's starch.
It's starch, like
Yep.
your pasta water or potato water.
Yep. You eat pasta or potatoes. Your pipes are safe.
If you like carbs.
Who doesn't?
We rinse a lot of freestanding lace out in the sink in this office.
Like a lifetime's worth.
Like everything we make gets rinsed there. And we have
the same
never had an issue with our sink
Yep.
or our plumbing. So that is our endorsement for not worrying about that, but you
Yep.
do what makes you comfortable. But
Agreed. Also, just, you know, the things we hear sometimes, Washaway is kind of a funny one. We hear things like, oh, our Washaway is made of seaweed, or there's silicone in it. And I just want to say, like, there's no seaweed in Washaway stabilizer. If there was, my question to you would be, why is there so much seaweed in the ocean that's not dissolved, right?
very good question.
Same thing, silicone is not a thing that breaks down in water. So for the most part, these are starch-based materials with sometimes some binders and adhesives to hold them all together.
All right, so Krista, we had a Canadian question.
We had lots
So
of Canadian
We love our
questions.
Canadian customers. Krista from Ontario, Canada asks, is it better to hoop or float a project?
Good question.
It's a great question because I bet you there are some people out there that say,
What's floating?
what is floating?
So that's when you get in an inner tube and you go to the river with a cooler. No?
That is floating, but I don't think it's in this case.
Not embroidery floating.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have this great graphic.
All right. Shout out to all of those of you who have floated a river in your life. Okay. Carrying on. Back to the
Focus,
graph.
Jordan. We have this great graphic that Tara made for me because I really wanted to try and get this illustrated because it's something I think that it's like a jargon. You know, we throw it around and people don't really necessarily know what it means. So hooping your project is you have the back of your hoop, you have stabilizer, you have your project, and you have the top of the hoop, and you squish the things between the two pieces of the hoop.
Yes.
Right? Which is really good in some cases.
Most.
Because it creates an even tension. We'll talk about that. But sometimes things really are hard to hoop, like a bulky towel or a tote bag or something. So you might want to float it. On the second graphic, you can see you have the hoop back, you have a sticky stabilizer, you have the hoop top. So you're hooping the stabilizer, and you're going to remove the paper backing that protects that sticky, so it's now sticky, and then you're going to stick your item to the top of it. So it is floating.
It should be called sticking.
Sticking is not nearly as nice.
No.
So that is floating.
Okay.
So when to float? When it's hot outside and you need.
See exactly.
Yeah,
now we're on it.
So again, it means securing your fabric to the stabilizer without using embroidery hoop.
Yep.
Right? Instead, the fabric floats on top of a sticky stabilizer, which is hooped.
Yep.
So ideal for thicker fabrics, right?
Yep. Sometimes used in conjunction with the basting box.
Yeah, I like a basting stitch because even though they're sticky, they're not so sticky that your item couldn't pull out if it's heavy or
except for hydro stick,
which we are going to
talk about that in a minute.
So when would you want to hoop your item?
Any other time you can.
Right. Okay. So hooping means securing your fabric and your stabilizer between the top and the bottom of the hoop, right? We covered that.
Correct.
So you would want to hoop if you can because it maintains the fabric tension.
Yep.
So for example, in our tiling scenes, we always say to hoop your fabric and your stabilizer and your fusible woven. And people, we get a lot of questions, and it's hard to do. Why do I have to do that? Why can't I float it? Why can't I X, Y, Z? When you're putting a lot of stitches into that piece of fabric, the hoop is actually helping keep the fabric where it's supposed to be. Again, so it doesn't draw in.
Exactly.
So that hooping action keeps things more evenly tensioned, right?
Yep.
It reduces distortion, right? Again, because the fabric isn't sliding around.
Yep.
And it's obviously better for thinner items versus thicker.
Yes.
So we have another great question about how to embroider on towels.
Ooh, that's a good question.
That was another very popular question. So,
especially if it's a nice big fluffy towel.
Yeah, those really nice ones.
Good, like oh, it's plush, right?
Yeah.
Hasn't been washed 1,000 times.
So we're going to watch a quick video on how to embroider on a hand towel, and we'll be right back.
Cool.
I love that video. I think it simplifies the process.
Yeah.
So I have the,
We're doing it again.
we're doing it again.
Okay, let's
So,
step through this.
The first thing we did on that video is we hooped our stabilizer, which in this case was Ultra Clean and Tear Plus. And we, again, we'll talk about why we chose that in a minute. Then we removed the sticky stabilizer.
So we scored the paper,
Yep.
right? Peeled the paper away. Stuck
our towel.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Then we take a topper. I'm actually upside down here. Let's look at it this way. We take our
that's so much
topper.
better.
Yeah, I guess it works. Anyway, we take our topper. In this case, we used a heat to go topper, which is
Okay.
heat removable. We also have a water soluble. And I basted it, you can see that.
Yep.
I did that because I didn't want my foot to get caught and all of that sort of thing. The nice thing about our toppers though is that they do have a nice texture. There was a question about your topper getting stuck to your foot, and I would say that I've not had that problem because this texture keeps it from kind of
Yeah.
sticking.
And when in doubt, a little bit of tape always goes up.
Tape, basting box, and then we embroidered. Easy, right?
Look at you.
Ta-da! So then what I would do is I would remove my basting stitches and I can tear away my topper. It would be good if I had brought a pair of scissors. So you're just going to remove as much as you can. That's okay.
Okay.
I think these creatives can envision. So you're going to just remove as
Imagine a
much.
pair of left-handed scissors.
Shush.
Okay.
Remove as much topper as you can.
Hey, there's scissors. I mean, those
Oh
are
yeah,
scissors.
this is helpful.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Put those away.
Okay. Remove as much as you can. And then because this is Ultra Clean and Tear Plus, which has an adhesive that is best released with water, I would, and I believe we did this in the video, spritz the back with water. It helps release things. It just makes it easier to pull up, and then you can tear that away.
Perfect.
So, Ultra Clean and Tear Plus, some toppers. We will talk about those items as we move on.
Diane said, what stabilizer do I use on tiling scenes?
And this really is a question that is, what stabilizer do I use in the hoop projects? What stabilizer do I use on freestanding lace?
Yeah.
We already tell you how to do that. Let's show you how.
Okay, so all of our project-based collections. So that's a thing where we're making a thing and we give you instructions how to make the thing.
Right, so not just a flat embroidery design,
Yeah.
but a wallet in the hoop, or a tiling scene, or a freestanding lace element.
Yep. We actually write out step-by-step instructions. And we do that as we test the designs, we go through and we write out all the instructions, and the education team pulls all that material together.
Pictures.
We do a ton of pictures.
Often
we do a
there's
little
videos.
video. Yeah, see,
Yeah.
we're going to the same place. And then we write out instructions.
Yep.
And then a different person on the team uses those instructions to recreate the thing.
Yep.
So we're really careful to go through those instructions step by step. But part of what we do is we actually include all the stabilizer info. So how do you get to your instructions?
Yeah.
A couple different ways. If your designs are on a USB that you got from your local retailer, there's a PDF right on that USB.
Yep.
If you download your designs, they're on the My Designs page where you would download it.
Yep.
There's also a link to the thread chart. So if you are looking at the thread chart beforehand because you're gathering all of your thread colors, there's a link right there. Or if you haven't bought it yet and you want to just kind of look at the instructions to see, is this a project you could tackle? On the product page on our website, there's a link right to the instructions, and if you click on that, you can read all the instructions
Yep.
before you even
You
buy
don't need
it.
to purchase a design to find out what stabilizer you need or what thread you
Exactly.
need.
Yep.
Or if you feel like it's something that's over your head, which I promise with these instructions, it's almost easier to do something that you might feel is more complicated because we're walking you through step by step with pictures.
It's my favorite way to do things.
Yeah, just one
Follow
step at a time.
instructions.
Exactly.
My wife doesn't believe that.
So,
Okay.
the answer, Diane, for what stabilizer do I use on tiling scenes is take a look at the PDF that comes with your tiling scene.
Yep.
And if you can't find that PDF, you can access it on the website, and it's going to tell you exactly what you need. But here's an example of what the step-by-step instructions look like. You
Yep.
can see you
Super
have the
good.
materials, it tells you the fabric, it tells you the thread, and then literally pictures of how to get through it.
Yeah. Okay. Ooh, TC says, what's the difference between Stable Stick Tearaway and Ultra Clean and Tear Plus? So this is kind of a throwback to a couple seconds ago when we were talking about the towel. Stable Stick Tearaway is kind of the commercial world's most common stabilizer because in the commercial world they want it fast, they want it reliable, kind of over and over the same results. And so Stable Stick, sticking a thing to a thing, you get a lot less shifting in the hoop, and it comes off really nicely. So
Yes,
Stable
very
Stick
crisp
Tearaway
tear.
would be one of those essential stabilizers.
Yep.
Ultra Clean and Tear Plus came from, Ultra Clean and Tear is a wonderful stabilizer. Probably it's like it's almost the equivalent of like a Washaway Tearaway,
Right.
where over time it's going to actually break down as it's laundered.
Yes. So that's Ultra Clean and Tear. We have it in Plus, which is sticky, and just regular Ultra Clean and Tear, which is not sticky. So
Yep.
just put that in the back of your head.
And so we got a lot of requests for we would love a stabilizer specifically for those really fluffy towels, where it wouldn't pull the loops when you're removing the stabilizer from the end, because Stable Stick's just a little too sticky. And so that's really where Ultra Clean and Tear Plus comes in, because like you mentioned, when we spritz the back of the towel, you can get it wet, that adhesive deactivates. That's what Plus means in our lingo, is that it's a pressure activated, water deactivated adhesive,
Yep.
and allows you to remove it from the project. And that was kind of a perfect lead into it. I'm glad I didn't just keep rambling, because I would have answered
Thank you.
TC's question early.
Yes. So Ultra Clean and Tear Plus, Stable Stick, Tearaway are two sticky tearaway stabilizers.
But they're different.
You might say,
How?
come on.
Okay.
Why do you have two of the same thing? Because they're very different. So Stable Stick Tearaway, and again, there's a Cutaway and a Tearaway version, so make sure you pay attention to which one you have, is a crisp, medium weight tearaway stabilizer with a pressure sensitive coating. Pressure sensitive meaning sticky.
This is my favorite stuff.
I think it's best for items that you are gifting or for things that have larger negative space. The reason that I choose Stable Stick for gifted items is often you don't want to wash
Yes.
the item before you give it.
Nobody likes
Right.
pre-washed towels.
Also, just put this in the back of your head. You're putting lots of things in the back of your head today. This is a water deactivated adhesive. So when you tear that away, sometimes it can feel sticky. There can be a residue or a perceived residue because it's a sticky. If you don't launder it, it
Correct.
can be sticky. So just know in your head you need to launder that to get rid of the adhesive.
Cool.
So I did an experiment.
Okay.
And I knew this to be true, but I think it's great to see it close up.
Okay.
So I did the same design on Stable Stick Tearaway and Ultra Clean and Tear Plus.
Okay.
Okay. On the Stable Stick Tearaway slide, you can see in that negative space where the arrow's pointing that there is some stabilizer there.
Yes.
Okay. This is after laundering. So
Yep.
I took it out of the hoop, threw it in the wash machine, laundered one time. The Ultra Clean and Tear Plus image, you can clearly see that the stabilizer is breaking down.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not
such a great example.
a water soluble. It's not going to totally disappear, but you can see the more you wash that, the softer it's going to get. The
Nice.
Stable Stick is going to stay exactly that way unless you physically remove it.
Cool.
So great for things, again, with big spaces that are easy to just
Yep.
pull that out.
Great example.
Thanks.
Okay. Ooh, Geneva from Louisiana.
I know it kind of rhymes.
Yeah, it's a nice name, Geneva. What is the best stabilizer to use on t-shirts?
Yes, and
All right.
this is another one where we have a great little video to play.
All right, so we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but of course for garments, polymesh really is our favorite. Again, that's for when you want a softer feel. You don't want like a heavy cutaway that might, feel rough on your skin. It's also going to drape really nice, which is another thing about polymesh we love. And again, it comes in a fusible and a non-fusible version. This also comes in white and black, depending on the color of the garment that you're embroidering as well.
So we're going to talk about ironing, which reminds me,
I should turn
have
the
you
iron
got
on.
our iron on?
No.
We're going to show you how this works, and you saw it a little bit in the video, but the way I like to embroider a t-shirt, and this is one of our brand new designs that I think is just beautiful. It's a little nod to my hometown of Buffalo.
I thought you were going to say Oklahoma.
Well, it's, both.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not from here, and you know that. So this is beautiful. I wanted to put it on a t-shirt. So
You did, good job.
in the video, you saw a baby shirt. This is a grown-up shirt.
Yes.
So you can see that what I did, and I actually fused 2 layers of polymesh
That was
fusible
perfect.
to this to give it a little more stability.
Yep.
Right? I fused it before I even did anything else. So I just took 2 pieces, cut them bigger than my hoop was going to be, so I didn't have to try and line things up. Fused it, then hooped, then embroidered. Okay? So now you say, cool, that's all stuck there. You can do a couple things. You can just kind of pull this off. What I like to do is reheat it, because when you reheat it with the iron that is heating up,
Yep.
it melts the adhesive again. It becomes less. Don't you iron right on this table, Jordan. Can't ruin the table.
There, I've got my perfect press cloth.
Yes.
Really just was a segue into the press cloth. If you don't know about the press cloth, we'll talk about that in a second.
So you heat this up, and it will become easier.
Hold that for me, thank you. Hold.
And if we had a little more time for this to get hot, it would come up even easier.
Yes.
So you're just going to heat that up till you can tear it, pull it back, and then trim it away.
I just restuck it. There we go. See, look at that. See how easy that came off once I actually started to heat it up?
So the nice thing about polymesh is that it's very drapey, so you're not going to get that shadowing behind the design on your shirt.
Like you would with a different cutaway.
Ta-da!
You can actually kind of see the shine of the adhesive there still too. All right.
So
for
again,
that.
this is just a larger version of what you saw in the video. So again, polymesh and its cousin, fusible polymesh, great for knits. I love it for quilt blocks even.
That's kind of part
You
of the
saw
fun.
in the video we use gentle touch backing, and that is like a knit almost.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. And it got a relatively permanent adhesive on the back. And the idea for this is that if you want a nice finished result after you embroider, especially if you're embroidering for children that don't like the insides of socks or any of those
Fussy
like,
husbands.
Yeah, those things. Then what you would do is you would actually cut out a piece of gentle touch backing, slightly larger than the embroidery, and you would fuse it on. And our recommendation is don't cut yourself a square, kind of round it right, don't give it those edges where it can peel loose. Fuse it onto the back, and then that is going to prevent the stitches from rubbing on skin. It's really a wonderful finish. If you're doing, again, if you're in that business where you're logoing for, your, a friend's business or your husband's business or somebody's business or somebody that pays you good money to embroider things, for a little bit of money, Gentle Touch will provide such a nice finish, and it's kind of that difference between you and the other people out there embroidering.
Yeah. And another of my most favorite things,
Template sheets.
template sheets. So let me get my t-shirt back because I didn't talk about this. You saw it in the video though.
Placement is key.
Placement is key.
Right.
So if you have your t-shirt, and what I did before placing this is actually, so you print out your design. It's an 8.5 by 11 sheet, template sheets. You can create these templates in any embroidery software, including free software. So if you have fancy software, that's great. If you have free software, also great. Your local machine dealership can probably talk to you about software.
Yep.
You print these out to scale, very important, and then it becomes a sticker of the design. So you put your item on the person. Ideally, you will put the item on the person who's going to wear it. And then you take I'll let you stick it on yourself.
So,
You look in the mirror. and you decide where it's going to look best.
Right there. That looks that.
It's kind of high,
But that's the other nice thing about template sheets. They're repositionable. I did that just so you would have a good little, here, is that better? Like you're right there?
that's, yeah. So you can see in this picture,
We can just keep moving it.
so you put it till you have the exact spot, and then you hoop around it. Use the placement tools in your machine to line up with your template sheet sticker.
Super easy.
Remove your template sheet sticker, and
Do
then
not stitch
embroider.
through.
Don't stitch through that.
And then stick it back on your paper.
You can reuse it. Also great for quilting in the hoop. So that's
Yes,
we have videos on that.
That's
if you
another class.
Want to search those. So template
good.
sheets. Placement is a lot easier to tell on the person than it is on an item that's flat on a table.
Yeah, and there's different tools and stuff that are like measures for giving you placement, especially when you're logoing and stuff. But again, it's so much easier just to stick it and visually look at it than to just kind of measure and guess and hope you got it right.
Yeah, because then you've embroidered and it
Especially for alignment, you know, the kind of that stuff. Like you saw me messing around trying to make sure that he was on a plane and not on a mountain. So yeah. Okay.
Yes. So
Toppers.
toppers. We talked about this a little bit when we did our towel. We have two kinds of toppers.
Heat to go and stitch 2-0.
Yeah.
And both are named based on how they go away. So stitch 2-0 obviously removes with water. And so the nice thing about stitch 2-0 is, again, it's an embossed topper. So it's designed so that it's not going to like cling wrap style to the embroidery foot and you know dance off your project. It's going to stay there, and then when you're done, you'll kind of tear the majority of it away and then wash. And when you wash, the rest will be removed, including what's under the stitches. Just kind of an important thing there too.
Right.
We'll talk about that when we get to heat to go in a second.
It's a good picture though. If you can tell on that picture on the top there, the with topper, without topper, this applies to both types of topper. You can see that the with topper S is just a little crisper on the edge. So even on a woven, you know, that's not a towel or anything with nap, it's just something with a weave.
Yeah.
The stitches can kind of nestle between
The weave, the
and
fabric.
the fabric. So it helps keep things up looking a little sharper.
That's a good point. And if you're doing towels or anything like that, you have to
must-have.
use
Yep.
topper.
It keeps
Otherwise, all the little tufts of the thing are going to show through, and it doesn't make your embroidery. You kind of, the thing, it almost looks like you had like bobbin thread come through.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
avoid that. Heat to go is great when you don't want to wash the thing. For example, that towel that we're giving as a gift, heat to go is perfect because you're going to embroider it, you're going to tear away as much as you can, and then with heat to go, what's really cool about this, there's basically two different types of heat away stabilizer or toppers in the world. One kind of like burns into an ash and then you sweep it away, which, and it also kind of leaves a little bit of a residue.
Okay.
Versus what we use is it's a heat topper that actually kind of sticks to itself. It doesn't stick to your iron. So you just vigorously kind of using a little motion, work the stabilizer out, it sticks up to itself, and then you just brush it off.
Yep.
And that's a fun one. Once you try it, you are going to fall in love. But it does need a little bit hotter iron, of course, for that stabilizer as well.
So you have to use it on something that can take the heat.
Yep.
So obviously you don't want to use it on like a cheap fleece that's going to melt. But the other thing is that you actually have to touch it with the iron.
Yes.
Right? We've tried putting it in the dryer or blow drying it, or it doesn't work unless the iron itself is actually touching the topper.
Yes, because the iron itself makes it shrink, pull to itself, pull away from the material, ball up into a little pill that you can then just sweep right off your project.
But
Great stuff.
Great stuff.
Yeah. Oh, Mary. Hi, Mary. So Mary from Ohio says, what do you use for freestanding lace? Mary, that is a great question. One of my favorites to answer. We get it all the time.
We do.
Essentially, we're going to use two different things. So Aqua Mesh Washaway is our Washaway stabilizer, which we use tons of it in our freestanding lace.
Tons.
It's mesh-based, so the reason we would use that is because it's going to hold up to the more dense stitching of lace. And it's going to wash away, like we mentioned, in some nice warm running water. Also, especially with our Oklahoma summers and humidity, it's not sensitive to air humidity, so it's real stable for a nice long time.
Yes.
And then what we'll do is, if you're doing lace and you want that lace to be like soft and drapeable, we're going to use 2 layers of aqua mesh. Now, if you're making a structure and you say, I want my lace to be a bit more rigid and stand-upable.
Stand-upiness.
Stand-upiness, an important attribute. Then we're going to take 1 layer of aqua mesh and we're going to layer it with a layer of Badge Master. Doesn't matter which one's on top, we get that question. Just matters that you have both. Because the aqua mesh is going to wash out a little faster and the Badge Master is going to take a little longer. He's going to stay in and be a little bit more rigid.
But the important point there
Jeez,
is that we are using 2 layers
always
of water-soluble stabilizer. Because when you're doing freestanding lace, there's a lot of more stitches than any other type of design because they're almost architectural, right?
Yeah.
They have to join to each other. So if you use one layer of stabilizer, and we do get this ticket a lot for freestanding lace,
Yep.
everything pulls in, right? Is not supported in the way it needs to be. And then let's say you're making a tea light holder and there's a straight edge at the end. That part might not connect with that other part.
Yep.
When you rinse it out, your lace is not connected properly. And then you think there's something wrong with the design. So this is not a place where you want to try and skimp because you're going to use a lot of lace or a lot of thread and you're not going to realize it isn't working until you're done.
And the other thing, just to repeat, we use one layer of Aquamesh and one layer of Badge Master because Badge Master on its own kind of has like a, sorry, a bit of a vinyl feel.
Yep.
And so the stitches would actually kind of punch it out.
Yeah, and we'll see that, and we actually see that in a little bit.
Carry on.
But yes, so the Aquamesh, you can continue your thought.
Okay.
The Aquamesh is more stable.
Provides some rigidity so that the Badge Master hangs on.
Yep.
Cool. Oh, Nancy from Texas.
Nancy.
Nancy, thank you for asking this. I was waiting to tell you this story. So Nancy from Texas says, how do I tell my stabilizer apart once they've been opened?
I lost it.
And if you've ever seen Aquamesh and Polymesh side by side, you understand Nancy's pain. So Nancy, my suggestion is to taste, no, I'm just kidding. But seriously, I mean, we've all done one of these and kind of touched the edge and see if it dissolves a little bit. But if you're smart like Karie, there's an even better way.
Yeah, this is one of those things that until somebody tells you to do it, you don't know to do it. And once you know to do that, it's sort of an obvious thing. When you take your stabilizer out of its packaging, roll up the label, stick it inside. That way you know what it is and you have the instructions on the back. Ta-da.
Genius.
Simple. Another one of those great simple solutions.
Good.
I think this is I'm gonna throw a theory out there.
Okay. Karie's theory of embroidery relativity.
A lot of things, a lot of puckers are actually because things haven't been pressed well.
Oh.
Okay? If you're stabilizing properly, which we're learning how to do, and you still are getting puckers, perhaps you need to give your item a good press. So we have a perfect embroidery press cloth. I think I have one here. Well, you saw it as we had it up on the top, on the table here, but a perfect embroidery press cloth kind of looks like a piece of batting, but it is not, so don't put it into your projects.
It's unicorn hair and magic.
It is. It is similar to, let's say, a wool pressing mat.
But it's not wool.
It's not wool, so if you have a wool allergy, it doesn't smell like a horse when it gets wet. I think that the wool smells bad.
Okay, that's totally fair. This is actually made from recycled wood fibers.
It is.
Yeah.
And how this works is you are going to press your finished embroidery face down into this mat. So you're going to press from the back.
Okay.
And what it does is it's squishy.
Yeah.
So it lets the iron actually hit more of the fabric, right? Because the embroidery can go somewhere, right? If you press it on
you don't smash the heck out of your stitches.
Exactly. If you press it on a hard surface or even a regular ironing board, the embroidery doesn't have a place to go, so you can't get to it with the iron.
Cool.
I think that makes sense.
Totally.
You can use this over and over. You can launder it, but I would do it on a very delicate cycle and hang dry.
Yes. And they're so inexpensive that kind of maybe not even worth it.
Right.
Yep. And one of our favorite educator tips, if you've been to one of our events and you've talked to one of our educator staff, a lot of them will tell you to like serge the edge of it or do something so that you know that it is a press cloth, embroider press cloth on it or something, so that way it doesn't turn into your next small batting project.
Done that. This is an extreme example of a good pressing can solve many issues. So this was the sample that we talked about earlier where I embroidered and laundered. And when you take it out of the wash, and it's the same if you were embroidering on a napkin, right? When you take it out of the wash, it looks terrible. And you think, this is terrible. Give it a good press. Makes a huge difference.
Cool. Pam from Minnesota says, what stabilizer do I use for embroidering on a quilt block? That's a great question,
It
Pam.
is.
Okay, so fusible woven is Karie's favorite thing. So
It's most of our favorite thing.
I would say stable stick Tearaway is mine. Karie puts it on everything like that hot sauce commercial. So fusible woven is not a stabilizer. It's actually a fabric prep material. Comes
more like an interfacing almost.
Yeah, comes in white and black. And so what we use this for is when we want to make sure that we love quilting cottons, right? But they're not really that high of a, like a stitch count or a thread
Thread
count,
count, yeah.
sorry, the thread count material. And so sometimes when we embroider those really delicate floral designs, you've got an example for us, they can pucker. But fusible woven is going to help add some body to your fabric. Here's a great example there, in fact. And it's also going to hide if you had a stabilizer behind that might shadow through. So we literally use this on almost every sample we make because it's so inexpensive and it's way cheaper than having to replace the pillow or other thing that we embroidered on that puckered.
So you would fuse a piece of fusible woven to the entire project, essentially,
Yep.
or whatever
back
is
of all the
going to
fabric,
be, the back of the fabric. That's a very easy way to say that. And then you will stabilize like normal. So it is a pre-stabilizer.
Yes. Again, it's not something you hoop. It goes on the material that you then hoop.
Yes.
It
Becomes part of your fabric.
Yes, it is permanent.
And we're going to talk again about our favorite polymesh and fusible polymesh. That's actually what I did on the back of this quilt block. So I fused polymesh and fusible woven to this piece of quilting cotton, then embroidered it, right? So that
perfect.
then I trimmed it out to size. Because if you saw, again, this one I just used regular cutaway.
Like some would do.
Yeah, and then trimmed it away. But if you look at it, it's very easy to see, I think it is, the shadowing behind this cutaway, right? So two things. You probably could have gotten away with using a cutaway and trimming it to size and actually sewing the stabilizer into your seams, which is what we're doing here. Because you don't want to see that difference in fabric weight almost.
So polymesh is the answer.
Polymesh is the answer. Yeah. And again, drapey.
Yes.
Right. So it doesn't make your quilt block crunchy.
Yeah. Nice. And then Maggie.
Maggie, she's got some items. She's maybe an advanced embroiderer.
Okay. Let's go with that.
What about things that won't stay in the hoop?
Yes.
So I do have an example. So imagine you were hooping, embroidering on a little zipper bag, right? You turned inside out, and it's going to take some finagling, right? You're going to have to kind of hold this part out of the way, but you need the part that's in the hoop to stay in the hoop.
Yep.
And if you were using a regular pressure-sensitive stabilizer, as you kind of pull this, it's going to pull up out of the hoop.
Yep.
So we have a wonderful product called Hydra Stick.
This is such a cool stabilizer,
Yeah,
too.
this is definitely an unsung hero, for
Yes.
sure.
Yep.
So Hydra Stick is a medium weight tearaway, and it has a starch-based, water-activated adhesive coating, which sounds very elaborate.
It's got some glue on it.
Basically, it's got glue, and the glue doesn't do anything until you get it wet.
But then once you get it wet and it dries,
Your
it
thing
is
is
stuck.
Yes,
Until
you get it
wet again.
wet again.
Yep.
So it will hold the items really securely. Great for anything weirdly shaped, super heavy. I used it on a denim jacket once. It was a large jacket, and if you can picture embroidering on a denim jacket, you're trying to keep it from, it's heavy. It's going to try to pull out of the hoop.
For
so
sure.
that was a really
Even
helpful
with
thing.
sticky stabilizer, and that's really the difference, right? I mean, just a little bit of force, we can take something off of stable stick, but Hydra Stick.
And you're going to see it in action, and you will see,
Yeah.
holy moly, that is
Okay.
stuck. So Hydrostick, really, really cool. So this is a twofer.
Okay.
So Joel from Virginia asks, what is the best stabilizer for patches? And Gina from Iowa asks, how do I embroider on a baby onesie? Fuse and seal. So this is the answer for a couple of things. So we're going to watch a quick video and we'll be right back.
Cool. Permanent stickiness.
Permanent stickiness. So we have, let's just show this really quick. So for patches,
gorgeous.
Right, you are going to embroider with 2 layers of badge master in the hoop.
Okay.
Okay, and this is a little bit different because you're making badges and patches, which is what its original use was for. And you see that in the video. There we embroidered, because it has a satin stitch around the outside, the last step almost perforates the badge, and then it's a badge. Then you're going to take, as you saw in the video, a fuse and seal, which is a permanent sticky.
Yep.
It's like real sticky.
Yes.
It's a non-stitchable item.
With a paper liner.
Paper liner. And you're going to fuse it to, you're going to trace out your patch, fuse it to one side, let it cool, take the paper liner off, and then you can fuse it to just about anything. You can see I've got this straw bag, which you could never embroider on well, and it is really on there.
Yes, it is.
The reason we mention this along with the onesies is this is our little hero from the video.
Happy little guy.
The nice thing about this is you didn't have to contort it in the hoop.
Yep, exactly.
And the inside,
ta-da!
No irritating stitches.
So the answer to both how do I make patches and stick them on things and how do I embroider on a onesie is you don't. You stick it to it.
Yeah, so you embroider the patch.
Yep.
And certainly you can embroider directly on a onesie.
Sure.
What I would suggest you do is use the same technique that we used with the t-shirt. Fuse some poly mesh to the back of this, embroider, and you just are going to have to be careful as you hoop it, and you're going to have to kind of
use that tiny little hoop that you've never used for your machine since you got it, right?
But this is a great cheater way, and I love
fantastic
a way around things.
Yep, good tip. Now, if you have additional questions or would like a written kind of overview of what we've talked about today, this QR code that's up on screen, snap a picture of that. And that will take you to our Stabilizer Basics article on the Project Hub.
Yeah.
There's a couple other ways to get there too if QR codes aren't your thing.
Yeah.
We'll
link it.
It'll be linked in the description on this video if you're on YouTube, or you can go to OESD.com, click on Project Hub, or go to projecthub.oesd.com.
And the Project Hub is actually also just a really cool thing that a lot of people don't know about.
Yep.
We have tutorials and tips and all sorts of great articles on there on embroidering, so if you want more information, that's
just some ideas. The team does an amazing job with that as well. So thanks again for hanging out with us and all the great questions. Really, again, appreciate those. If we didn't get your question today, I apologize. Tried our best to get to as many as we could, but please join us in the Perfect Stitch. We'll keep answering your questions there. And
Also can send us an email.
yes, you can email us support@oesd.com. And as always, from both Karie and I, happy stitching.